Age of Wonders 4 was just announced, and this 4X strategy game that combines turn-based and RPG elements is set to release actually really soon. And that is why in this video, if you've been wondering what is this game, or maybe you need a refresher, looking for something new, I'm going to take you through what Age of Wonders 4 is, a little bit of the background that the developers have shared in some developer diaries. We'll also take a look at some gameplay that they've shared, which will be linked below. I'd encourage you to check out the live stream, and some screenshots and more information about Age of Wonders 4. So sit back, relax, and let me introduce you to everything we know so far about Age of Wonders 4. The first developer diary talks about the inception of the game and what's changed between Age of Wonders 4 and some of its predecessors. By the way, I'll keep the information that I'm referring to from the developer diaries on screen so you can follow along if you want to, but also I'll be talking you through it, hopefully the best of both worlds. They start off by talking about how Age of Wonders 4 has been in development for about 3.5 years, and since Triumph joined Paradox and released Age of Wonders Planetfall, the sci-fi sister game has allowed them to experiment with a lot of different things around a new audience on consoles, IP building, ranged combat, empires, mods, that kind of thing. Age of Wonders 4, incorporating a tactical RPG element to it, of course, has a story, and here, essentially, it starts with the banished wizard kings breaking free from their otherworldly prisons, corrupted by centuries of torment, and returning to the world of Athla, they now seek other realms that lie within their grasp. Not satisfied to reclaim their thrones, they really want to establish themselves as gods over mortals. So the mortals, in response, scramble, rallying their populations to fend off the invaders. Choosing to be a mortal champion or one of the wizard kings is one of the key things that will decide between his players, and they showed that to us, I should say, in the gameplay showcase, the live stream that they did recently. They go on to say that we must master the forbidden arts and prepare for a confrontation, the likes of which the universe hasn't seen, like a Thanos click kind of deal, taking the conflict to Athla and other worlds within the Astral Sea. So that's the lore behind Age of Wonders 4, and it does play in, of course, to that character creation, like I say. One of the most significant new features, and one that you'll absolutely have seen and continue to see in this video, is the customization that they're bringing to the vision, and what they label as their vision of creation in the game. There's really some good detail here to drill into, though, with the enhanced avatar and character customization. We essentially get to build our own starting race, choosing its physical form, its culture, its traits, its magical tome, defining a unique race at the very start of the game. You can go for an existing trope, create your own, and they list off some examples, right? Mystic toads, cannibal halflings, we saw some cannibal barbarians on the stream, isolated deep dwarves. You get the idea. Modularity to creating fantastical races. And don't forget, of course, as we may discuss a little bit later on, but it's important to note here that when you create the race and play perhaps as it in Age of Wonders 4 in a future campaign, you may then end up playing against it. So you're not just creating something as a one-time thing, but it could very well become part of the sort of living world that you're building and creating yourself as well, adding to that strength of having a really detailed character customization, which so far Age of Wonders 4 seems to have. Here we get some really great detail on some new features coming to Age of Wonders 4. The first one is the Tomes of Magic and other progression systems. Here you can kind of think about this as the game's tech tree, where there are 54 Tomes of Magic spread across 6 different magical affinities: order, chaos, astral, nature, so on and so forth. Each tome is centered around a theme. Order, chaos, etc., centered around things like pyromancy, necromancy, faith, teleportation, and furthermore, it includes a number of spells and upgrades for your whole empire that you can research. That's the research tree, as you can sort of level up through different tiers of tomes, essentially. They go on to say that you could start with goblin barbarians and follow the path of shadow with tomes like necromancy and cryomancy that create a frozen empire. Or you could use nature tomes to create an empire that lives in harmony with the creatures and the forests in the world around you. As well as tomes, you can use the empire tree to unlock skills that improve your empire as a whole. Each affinity has its own branch that follows a particular playstyle. Chaos focuses, of course, on leading armies into conquest, while something like Order looks to conquer the world through vassalage and diplomacy. Order being more akin to governance, perhaps, whereas Chaos, of course, leading into all-out conflict. And as you move through the game and lead into these very handily color-coded, apologies, colorblind folks, hopefully there'll be accessibility options for you, tomes and skills, it develops into this empire tree. And of course, as you lean into something like nature, you'll get better and better unlocks, sort of incentivizing you to move further along that branch and perhaps ignore others. And that's where they go on to say that your own unique path and cosmic affinities of the spells that you use, cities that you build, of course, because you're building an empire, or the kind of units that you field will affect how you and your people will grow, physically and socially, trying to provide sort of that nice blend between RPG progression with 4X strategy, sort of grand strategy city builder, those kind of gaming genres. And then they list off some quick-fire new features that you'll probably be quite interested in. Let's go through them all now. The first one is a new narrative engine. This is really important for providing a little bit of story and depth behind the game, I think. They say that the new narrative engine laces encounters and diplomacy with other aspects of the game, providing more narrative flair. How we respond as players to the events will test us as leaders, and the events relax and react, I should say, to who we are, immersing us potentially in a world, and of course relating back to some of those other things that we talked about earlier, right? Like the chaos versus order. Hopefully we should see those sort of drive a plot, an epic plot, allegedly, forward and through the lore. Next up, they talk about an intricate diplomacy system, where both us and rival rulers or free cities, those kind of neutral barbarian tribes, but much more than just roaming units, of course, neutral cities that we encounter on the map, have a great deal of attention with new types of pacts that we can forge with them, or grievances, and apparently more AI personalities to deal with. And that's really important as well, so that they don't just become these kind of faceless entities on the map, numbers to storm over. The AI will apparently also have better awareness of who we are and their own place inside of the world. I look forward to testing that one out. Moving on to cities and economy, they say that cities can develop in multiple new ways. This is good information, by the way, because it's the first look that we've really had at how cities will develop outside of, sort of conflicts and units and lore. That's all we've really heard about up until this point. They say that they've introduced a new province-based system where population growth directly results in new territory that can be added to our city's domains, allowing us to shape our domains and expand towards maybe particular high-value locations. Other features include the ability to separate out production queues from structures and units to ensure that new units can be drafted faster without stalling city development. It'll be interesting to see how they handle the balance of production or industry in producing both of those queues at the same time. There's potential for some really fun things to happen. They go on to say that there are also some special province improvements for us to build around our cities, and new empire management resources called specifically called Imperium. The game's economy alone will likely be the subject of multiple dev diaries in future, so you'll have to stay tuned for that. And I do intend to cover Age of Wonders 4. Maybe not every dev diary, maybe they get combined into a few videos, I'm not sure. But if you'd like to follow along, consider subscribing, because it's certainly captured my interest. Speaking of capturing my interest, the last thing on the list is the combat and the new siege system. They say that combat has always been at the heart of the Age of Wonders series, and in this case it's even better with a new morale system that can cause units to rout, adding a new dimension to combat. And we saw this a little bit in the live stream as well. They talked about unit morale potentially being so low that the units could flee. They go on to say that they've added clearly defined unit roles, making it easier for us to identify units in game. And of course, there are a ton of new units and clever abilities that look and animate better than ever. And we saw, of course, that interesting, fairly long, drawn-out encounter, but really not long enough, with the giant in the live stream. It was great to watch. There are more links between the world map and combat. They go on to say, like narrative event options that we talked about earlier that impact battles, and a new siege system that's proposed these sort of much larger, up to 12 on 12 army unit combats, I believe. That system also takes on preparations in the world map and gives defenders a window to break that siege. But that's probably getting into too much detail. They'll fill us in more on that a little bit later. And in the game's just released second developer's diary, we get a much better look into some of the greater detail around that character customization system. In particular here, they're talking about affinities, a system that they claim sits at the heart of Age of Wonders 4. Each affinity represents an archetype, a cosmic force that defines the type of magic that you will use, the elemental forces you control, and the type of society that your faction develops. There are 6 affinities inside of Age of Wonders 4, but in this developer's diary, they're mostly going to be focusing on just one, the Order affinity, the one that brings structure to the cosmos and to the lives of mortals. I've kind of thought about this a little bit so far as sort of a just governance kind of role. It's associated, they go on to say, with light, justice, faith, and the government of empires. There you go. I've probably already read that in my head and thought I was really clever. Anyway, in gameplay terms, Order is of course focused on governance. They say diplomacy, healing, interestingly, and city stability. So to build our faction's affinity, the first step is to choose a culture. We'll also choose society traits in a little bit. They tell us that a faction's culture represents who they are before we take control of them. You can kind of think about this as their collective history, I suppose. And it mostly affects the starting units in the game. There are 6 cultures in the game to choose from, and the one most strongly associated with Order, suggesting that each one will have kind of natural associations, is, quote, high culture. Having the likes of high elves, we then learn that we have a sort of spirit damage associated with Order, a type of holy energy that's especially effective against undead units. High cultures defining features that their units anyway, can become awakened, allowing them to channel spirit damage through their physical attacks. Once we've put that culture to one side, we also have to think about our society traits. These traits represent general philosophy around our people and what they follow, as well as how they live their lives and govern themselves. These traits are associated with an affinity, and they've gone ahead and listed a few of them in the developer diary that are associated with Order anyway. And to get a quick look at a couple of society traits, not to bog us down, of course, too much in the detail, while we may be just getting used to a new game or a new format, it's important, I think, that we at least get a little bit of a taster. We know that the traits represent the kind of general philosophy that the people will follow. The first one that we see is chosen unifiers, an Order trait, a reminder that, of course, we're focused on justice, on light, on governance, and it is allegedly the epitome of Order as a force for diplomacy, granting us 10 points of good alignment, improving diplomatic relations with other not evil factions that we meet, and granting us a bonus to our income from vassals, cities that have joined our empire via diplomacy instead of conquest. That is obviously a fantastic trait for a stable, peaceful, order-providing people. They also go on to show that there's another one called imperialists. The imperialist trait represents Order as a force of political and economic domination, granting a bonus to that Imperium resource income, vital for building an empire with many cities, and buying skills from the empire tree becomes a bit cheaper as well. So we get a little bit of a feel for how those society traits can affect our people, and of course, how the culture represents their history. Remember earlier on from Developer Diary Run how we talked about those, I believe, 54 different tomes, kind of a tech tree? Well, this is where they come back in action, because the final and most important aspect of a faction's affinity are the tomes of magic, and which one we choose to research. Each one contains a number of spells, units, and upgrade, all centered around a particular theme, and each tome is associated with one core affinity. There are 9, for example, associated with Order, the one that we've been looking at so far using the information from this developer diary, that will more and continue to focus to lead our people down that path of sort of righteous, just governance, lawful domination, as they call it in the developer diary. Here we get a little glimpse in that the Tome of Faith is an early game tome that provides, or sort of more focuses around a supporting role, around healing and support units. Perfect, they say, for a religious faction that wishes to build a shield for its armies with holy power. The chaplain is a powerful healing unit who can bless units to boost their combat prowess as well. And if you're more interested in using your own culture's support units, then the Staves of Mending enchantment will grant them extra healing powers, as well as making them cheaper to support. Now, the developer diary goes on to give us a lot of quite good and focused information down in on these individual tomes. And I think if you think about the magnitude of tomes that we're going to be dealing with across the sort of 6 different layers, or maybe you jump in 54 different layers of tomes, whatever level you look at it, I think there's clearly going to be a rich level of customization here. And in another wonderful callback to the first developer's diary, we get a greater look at the Empire tree, and this is one that particularly interests me. So, up until now, moving through the developer's diary, based on the decisions that we've made so far, they've ended up with a culture that gives us a start with 6 order, thanks to choosing a high culture, imperialists, and the Tome of Faith, for example. It's stacked a lot of order points, if you will. And then we branch down the order tree. Well, a branch of the tree. Important to note there are 7 branches in total, 1 branch for each of the 6 affinities, and then 1 shared branch. Since our hypothetical faction in this developer diary has 6 order affinities, we will then look to start rapidly unlocking skills down the order branch of the tree, because that is the history and the lives of our people. But we won't really be able to stem down any other branches or get much else unless we start to unlock the other affinities. And so that's where we start to see the decisions really matter. Who or what kind of character we create and the kind of society that we build will directly impact what we can or can't unlock on the Empire tree. We then get a nice little deep dive. The order branch of the tree is focused heavily on things, as we probably know by now, like diplomacy and vassals. And it can deliver skills such as a Whispering Stone that gives to a free city, essentially, to help it sway to our side. Hey, do you like this whispering shiny stone? Since most empires only have 1, it allows us to try and vassalize twice as many cities at once. We gain +1 Whispering Stone. There's also the Rally of Lieges, a mechanic that allows us to recruit units directly from our vassals and ancient wanderers, which we also saw, I believe, on the live stream. This skill means that any unit we recruit via the rally starts as an experienced veteran with extra health and other bonuses. Nice potentially for our defender. I note that this one costs 3 times as much Imperium as well as the previous. And then finally also we get a look at the Rite of Allegiance. And they go on to tell us that the tree also contains rites, which are sort of one-off rewards that trigger to maybe help us out of a tough spot or optimize our plan. This rite that they show us, the Rite of Allegiance, gives us a friendship boost with every free city on the map. The next Dev Diary will talk about lore and story realms, and of course there's so much more that we have to uncover, but it's important to note that overall, there are some big and exciting things to cover about this game. The first one is that May the 2nd is its release date. That's May the 2nd of this year. So we're not actually going to have to wait like 16 months for this one. They revealed it. They said it's coming out in 3 months. And we're going to give you a, quote, intense barrage of development journals and other community activities. We will take a deeper look at the many facets of this game, gameplay features, art, etc. And we hope that you like what we've shown you so far, blah, 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 end quote. Now, that is really important to us, of course, because we know there's going to be a lot of information coming thick and fast over the next few months. And if you are as interested as I am in Age of Wonders 4, why not stick around? Thanks so much for joining me today, everybody. I'll see you next time.